Thank you for joining us today for our Wednesday webinar here at the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs. Today we'll be talking about my information was breached. What now? So we'll be talking about a couple of different things you can do to protect your identity if you get a security breach notice in the mail from a company. I know if you're like me, you've probably received a few of these by now. I know I've gotten one for a mortgage company, a phone company, and it seems like something else that I'm forgetting from a few years back. But hopefully we can kind of help you walk through that process and help you take some steps now that will protect you from identity theft in case your information is involved in a data breach or a security compromise. Here's a little bit about Zoom. We're using those for our webinars, obviously. Now you should see a little chat and a Q&A box that will help you send us some messages throughout the presentation. I've also put in the slides for the presentation and a couple of other PDFs that may help you out too, that are also available on our website about identity theft and security breach notices. Hopefully those will be there in the chat for you guys. If they're not, I can email those to you, and I'll have my email address at the end of the presentation for you. Or if you get our information from our public info email address, you can also reply to those, and that will come to my inbox as well, and we'll help you out with that. But along with the chat and the Q&A, like I said, you should be able to hopefully download those little slides there. If you look for those boxes, that will pop up. And again, we usually give you kind of our quick disclaimer. This presentation is not meant to serve as a substitute for reading various laws discussed, seeking legal counsel, or otherwise requesting department guidance or interpretations on the laws it administers and enforces. The presentation merely serves as an introduction and overview of our topic. And we'll give you a quick little roadmap for our presentation today. We'll give you a quick introduction to our agency, and then we'll talk about some of the security breach numbers. So we'll look at kind of what was reported to our agency in 2024. And then we'll look at some free tools that you can use that will help you protect your identity. And I'll give you a couple of little main takeaways, some things that you can do that will help you out as well. And of course, all of our resources are free that we will point you out to today. So how can SCDCA help you? You can file a complaint with our agency. We receive thousands of complaints every year, and that number continues to grow each year, it seems. But basically, we use a mediation process, voluntary mediation process, to go through those complaints. A lot of times it's just helpful to write out what's happened and what you would like to have happen, and have that additional person kind of help get that information to the correct place at a business. I tell people a lot of times, especially if it's a very large company that you're dealing with, sometimes just getting that complaint to the right person is the key, and hopefully we can help you do that. You can report a scam to our office, and you can report those even if you didn't fall victim to them. That's kind of important to mention to people. We use that information to kind of help educate other people across the state and hopefully prevent others from becoming a victim. So that's really important to us, and it helps us out with presentations like these to kind of help us understand what's going on across the state and what we can do to help other folks with. You can report identity theft situations to our office, and we have an identity theft unit that will walk through that process with you. They can help you kind of look at what's happened and figure out the steps you might need to take to prevent further damage from happening. Some cases they can kind of help walk you through that and take steps that might be able to help you get some money back as well. So it's important to get in touch with us, and we can help you kind of walk through that and figure out what you might need to do. You can background a business with our agency. So you can go through and look at complaints that have been filed with us and see kind of what's happened and what steps those businesses took. Sometimes they'll say, a business didn't respond. So that might give you an idea of kind of what's going on with the business, but it also may give you a good idea if they're going through and they're responding to complaints and they're taking actions that you think are reasonable. That might help you better decide to use a business or not. And we also have information about industries that we license on there too. We can also point you to some of the other state agencies that may license or regulate a particular industry. So we can help you kind of find out some of that information that might help you learn a little bit more about a business you're considering using. And of course, we do free presentations like the one you're watching now online, but we also do them in person. So we travel across the state. Again, all of those are free. We have a wide variety of topics that we do, everything from credit reports and scores. We'll do identity theft and scam prevention, obviously. We also have a variety of other topics that we'll do, and all of that information's on our website. And we try our best to kind of get answers for people who may reach out to us. We have a real life person who will answer our phone here at the agency. You won't get a call center or anything like that, or an automated number when you get through to us. You'll get a real person who can hopefully either get you the answer you need or help direct you to the right place to get the answers that you need. So we kind of pride ourselves in being able to help folks with that. And if you go to consumer.sc.gov, the best place to look for a lot of the different resources that we offer is that How Do I button that's right there in the middle of the screen. And you can click that and it will give you those drop downs that you see right there. So you can file a complaint, background of business, report identity theft scams, and also request those presentations if you are a church or community group or school, whoever you're kind of working with. If your group needs a presentation, hopefully we can help you out with that. And you can also click that little About Us button there, and that will give you a little bit more information about our agency, how we operate, and some of the industries that we oversee. So we'll kind of start with a little bit of information about security breaches in general. And we're kind of talking about unauthorized access, acquisition of records, particularly PII, or personal identifying information. So what we're kind of talking about with this is kind of the intent is that some kind of illegal use of that PII has occurred or is likely to occur. So kind of those two things have to happen: unauthorized access or acquisition of that data with the PII, and then there's this assumption that something illegally has reasonably happened or is likely to happen. And when we're talking about PII, we're usually talking about things like social security numbers, driver's license numbers, maybe if you have a state identification card, it's got that number on it, maybe a financial account number, credit card number, any of those types of things. And that's kind of what we're considering PII. Of course, there's few more documents that will be considered in that too, likely. But state agencies and businesses who keep PII are required by law to notify consumers when there is a breach. And by state law, that breach must be reported to the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs and National Credit Reporting Agencies when more than 1,000 South Carolina residents are affected by that breach. So some businesses will notify us when there's less than 1,000, but generally that 1,000 consumers is kind of that number that state law requires. But if you go into our website, and I'll kind of quickly show you where you can find that, it's underneath that Identity Theft and Scams tab there, consumer.sc.gov. And then right under kind of where I've got that big circle, you'll see security breach notices. And if you go to that page, it will show you a list of businesses that have reported security breaches to our office. And it'll also tell you when they reported it to us and the number of South Carolina residents impacted by that breach. So sometimes you might see a number that is smaller than 1,000. That's just the business kind of taking that additional step. They're taking that notification process. The law doesn't require them to do that, but they're doing that kind of on their own, or taking those, they're going a step further with that. And we will post those on our website. So when you go there, you'll be able to click those notices and it will show you the notice that is actually being sent to those customers. So a lot of times it will kind of outline what's happened or what they believe has happened, the information that was involved. Usually they're offering, some kind of monitoring service as well for your credit. And it will usually have a little bit of that information there. There may be some things that we kind of block out just so people can't go in and copy all of that. But your notice that you're receiving in the mail or by email from those companies should look exactly like that. And we share that information on there because we know sometimes scammers will kind of pretend to be some of these companies that have had breaches and send kind of false information to folks. So it's important to kind of go through those notices too, and you can kind of double check all of that information that is posted there. And if you've got the slides as well, this would just be a direct link. So if you just click that in those slides, it should take you directly to that site. But again, it's consumer.sc.gov, and it will be under that identity theft tab there. So if you just hover over it with your mouse, if you're on the desktop, it should kind of show you that little section with the security breach notices. And here's a little quick look at some of the kind of commonly affected industries that report security breaches to our agency. Education, and of course, that's school systems, colleges, universities, things like that. Financial category would include banks, lenders, services. Whoops, kind of advanced a little bit early there. Sorry about that. But it's going to be investment companies, things like that when we talk about our financial category. Our government category is going to be your local, county, state agencies, things like that. health organizations, hospitals, doctors' offices, a medical supply company, pharmacies, insurance companies probably fall under that, especially if it's health insurance. Hospitality organizations, hotels, restaurants would fall under that category. And then, of course, retail. It's a pretty broad category that's going to range from clothing stores, maybe auto parts stores, anything like that. Kind of your retail establishments that you're probably going to and shopping with from time to time. And you'll kind of notice a good bit of information that some of these companies would likely have about you. And a lot of that information is going to be things like we say personal data, and that's going to be things like your social security number, maybe a tax ID number, name, address, driver's license number. Your financial data, of course, is going to be things like your credit or debit card number, maybe some information about your income if it's, like a mortgage company or something like that, and they're storing all kinds of information about you when you put in that application. Credential data, maybe something like your personal email address, account username would be something like that, or your passwords. That's kind of what we consider with credential data. And lastly, we'll talk about protected health data, and that's usually things like medical records, diagnosis, treatment, test results, medications. I know a lot of doctors' offices want you to go in through those apps and those websites to kind of set up appointments and maybe manage different medications and things like that. So that would be kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about protected health data. And that's all information that you probably want kept secure and not out there on the web for anybody to get information about. So in 2024, 121 businesses reported breaches to the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs, and those breaches impacted 3,903,857 kind of individual reports is how we'll kind of word that. And the reason I say that is that it could be the same person multiple times. Like I mentioned, I was involved in a couple of different breaches. So if I had a mortgage company, a phone company, and let's just say a credit card, something like that, my information might be in those reports multiple times. So it's, not necessarily 3.9 million people, but it would be 3.9 different kind of breaches or reports of breaches, something like that. So, I mean, those are individual people, but, the same person may have multiple companies reporting breaches involving their data. So that's kind of why it's worded that way. And we wouldn't really have a way to check to see how many times the same person was notified. That information isn't provided to us. So we would know that one company notified a couple hundred people, another company may have notified several thousand people, but we don't have a way to kind of double check those numbers to see if the same people are showing up multiple times. So that information is not kind of cross-checked with that. So that's kind of why we word it that way with the 3.9, and that those individuals may be in there multiple times. Here's kind of a quick look at kind of those industries and how they were involved. You'll see financial breaches, 32 breaches reported to South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs, and that impacted, you'll see those numbers kind of below those bar charts there. So that was 1.8 million consumers impacted by those financial breaches. Again, these things may be something like credit card information, mortgage information, those account numbers, things like that. Retail breaches, and this is kind of important to stress sort of, you got 8 breaches there, but it impacted 1.17 million people with that. So, it's kind of important to think about too. You can have just one or two companies involved in a breach with a very large number of people impacted by that one company's breach, and it may pull up, a whole category or, greatly impact that number. It kind of depends on those individual businesses. So with retail, there were only 8 breaches, but it was a large number of consumers potentially impacted by those breaches, just, because of the large nature of the information and, how greatly, involved that 1 or 2 breaches could have been. So, you just have a handful of breaches, but it's a larger number for those. With the health industry, there were 25 breaches, impacted 364,259 consumers. And we do have a other category that we put some things in. So we'll kind of take a look at some of the types of businesses that may have fallen into that and see kind of if this needs kind of broken out into better categories, maybe next year or something. But we had 45 breaches that impacted 452,238 consumers. Those fell into that other category. And kind of rounding out some of our other ones, let's take a look here. If I have that in there, I do not. So we'll kind of skip over that. I was trying to see here. I do have numbers on government. We had 2 breaches involving government agencies, and that impacted just about 20,000 people. So that was kind of our number in there. I was trying to see if I had hospitality. 6 breaches impacting 41,732 consumers for those hospitality breaches. And again, like I mentioned, one company, if they have a gigantically large number of people impacted in their breach, it may kind of fluctuate that category based on there. So as always, like I say, we like to mention those free tools that you can use to protect yourself and your personal identifying information. Kind of the reason I say this is if you're getting these notices about a breach, hopefully you can take some steps beforehand so you're not an identity theft victim, right? So if you've taken some steps beforehand, you can prevent becoming an identity theft victim. Just because your information has been included in a breach doesn't necessarily mean that you're identity theft victim. So, we want to help protect you before somebody can use that information, right? So if the information gets out there, you can protect yourself. One tool you might want to consider is a fraud alert. Basically, it lasts 1 year, and it is something that you put in on your credit reports. And basically, you're telling other businesses that, if somebody's trying to apply for a loan or some kind of credit application, the fraud alert is going to make them aware that something has happened with your credit, and they need to take extra steps to verify your identity and make sure that it's actually you applying for that line of credit. Again, the fraud alert lasts 1 year. It can be extended if there are actual signs of identity theft. But you basically do one call. That's all. That's what we say with that. And basically, you're notifying one of the 3 major credit reporting bureaus. So Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. You'll notify one of them, and they notify the other 2 that a fraud alert needs to be in place and that something's going on and people need to take extra steps to verify that it is you applying for identity or for credit application or whatever. Sorry about that. The big thing that I always encourage people to do, put a security freeze on your credit reports. And this is kind of something that you can do ahead of time, and it will be a great tool to prevent identity theft. And basically, you're putting that freeze in place on your credit reports to stop new lines of credit from being created in your name. You'll need to contact each of the 3 major credit reporting agencies, so Experian, TransUnion, Equifax with that. If you end up seeing that you need to apply for a new line of credit, you'll need to thaw it. So basically you can go to their website, and I'll give you a little bit more information on this in a second, but you'll go to their websites or give them a call and you can put that thaw in place, and it's going to lift that freeze. So if you're needing to apply for a car loan, or, just a few months ago, I got a new line of new internet set up in my house. So when I needed to do that, I put the thaw in place on my credit report. It took the freeze off, and I was able to apply for that service. And then once all that went through, you put the freeze back in place, and that's going to protect your credit from somebody else, putting in those applications in your name. So we know identity thieves want to put you on the hook for something that they're doing. So they're applying for car loans, maybe credit cards, things like that in your name, or setting up internet services, phone services, things like that. So this freeze is basically going to stop other people from using your line of credit. So if you're not actively out looking for new lines of credit, it's a great tool you can put in place to protect your information and your identity. And basically, it's available to anybody. And again, you have to put in the request to each of the credit reporting agencies. You can do it by phone, by online. You might even be able to do it by email. But basically, when you put a freeze in place, those credit reporting agencies, they're going to have to put the freeze in place within 1 business day if you've done that by the phone or the internet. And if you do it by mail, they'll have 3 business days once they receive that to be able to put that in place. But again, that's going to help you out and protect your credit from somebody else from using it. And then those credit reporting agencies are going to send you some written confirmation. It will include a PIN or a password for you to be able to kind of lift that freeze whenever you need to use that line of credit. So they're going to give you a way to be able to put the freeze in place and then lift it whenever you need to do so. And again, you can do this for a temporary time too. Whenever I had to apply for a line of credit, like I said, I just did internet service not too long ago. I realized I needed to thaw my credit for that application to go through. You can go onto their websites and you can set it just to lift for a certain amount of time. So you can lift it for that one day and have that freeze automatically go in place the next day. So that's a great tool to do. And again, you're going to have to go to each one of the 3 major credit bureaus to do that. And while the freeze is in place, basically, if somebody tries to apply for a line of credit in your name, it's going to give a notification that somebody's applied for that and it was stopped because it was frozen. Like I said, I've got a freeze in place on my credit reports. Got a notification. This was great for me. I say it was great for me. It wasn't great necessarily, but somebody tried to open up a credit card in my name. I had a freeze in place, and then I get a notice from the credit reporting agency that, somebody's tried to apply for this line of credit. It was stopped because you have a freeze in place, and they'll tell you, if you're trying to open this line of credit, you need to lift that freeze. But if it's not you, it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's stopping that new line of credit from being opened up, and it will be a great way to stop identity theft. And again, you can temporarily remove these, kind of what I was just saying. You put that thaw in place, and you can do that online. You can do it by mail or by phone. And again, you can do it by a specified time. So if you're like looking for a new car or something like that, and you think it's going to take you a couple days, you can go onto their websites for Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, and set that freeze just to lift for a few days, or that time period that you think you might be looking for a new car. Or sometimes if you're thinking you just need a new credit card, you might just need that couple of hours to fill out that online application or whatever. So you can kind of set that time in there, and it will automatically put the freeze back in place once you've done that. If you're doing that through the website or by the phone, they'll generally have that thawed out in an hour for you. If you're doing it by mail, it'll be 3 business days. But if you're doing it online or by the phone, like most of us do, it's just 1 hour. So I like to tell people when I went to apply for an application for a car loan, I put that lift in place, or I unfroze my credit report during that time when I was driving to the dealership. So by the time I got to the dealership and I sat down at their office, that thaw was already done. We were able to go through, put that application through and all that. And by the time, I was leaving the dealership, I was able to put the freeze back in place. So that's a great tool that you can do. And it's pretty quickly how they can do that. And again, if you want to lift it, it's kind of that same thing, freeze or lift. There'll be 1 hour if you do it by phone or the online, or 3 business days if you're doing that by mail. And I like to mention to people too, there are additional protections if you're in the military, especially if you're on active duty. There is an active duty alert that you can put in place, and it runs for a year generally, but you can have it renewed for the length of your deployment. Really encourage folks, if you are active military duty, kind of talk to the credit reporting agencies about this and how it works. But basically, you can contact one of them. So you would contact Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, and they'll notify the other 2 reporting agencies for you. And they put that in place, and there's going to be extra steps that businesses would have to take again to verify information, things like that. But the active duty alert is going to give extra benefits to members of the military. It's a little bit extra duty than just the standard fraud alert. And it will remove pre-screened offers and things like that for 2 years. So again, if you're active duty, you'll want to kind of discuss that with those credit reporting agencies and get a little bit more information from them. And again, it kind of works a lot of the same way. But again, it will also kind of give you those additional notifications. So if you have payments that are being missed, that are being reported to credit bureaus, they'll kind of walk you through some of that and give you those notifications. They're going to give you free credit monitoring as well. So if you're active duty, please give one of the credit reporting agencies a call and discuss those processes with them. And parents, we also kind of consider or encourage people to consider putting a protected consumer freeze on your child's credit. I know people kind of get frustrated sometimes and say, well, my child shouldn't have a credit report. And that's absolutely right. But if they're the victim of identity theft, somebody may be opening up new lines of credit in their name and using their information. And we tell people it can be, several years before a child's identity theft situation is discovered. And it's because they're not actively kind of using that line of credit. So if somebody's out there creating those credit applications and things like that in their name, it can potentially go on for years before, that child becomes old enough to use credit and then discovers somebody's used their information. So really encourage parents to do that, and we'll kind of walk you through a little bit of that. It's a little bit more complicated than what, placing that for an adult would be, but if you have a minor under 16 years old, or it even goes in places for incapacitated adults, you can do that as well. You'll have to provide additional information kind of proving that you are a guardian for this person. So there are extra steps where you'll have to mail copies of like birth certificates or additional documents to kind of prove that, you have this relationship with that other person. So you'll have to kind of walk through that. Each one of the credit reporting agencies has a little bit of different process, but they all will kind of protect that child once you get it in place. And again, it will kind of work a lot of the same ways as a regular consumer freeze, but you'll want to talk to that with those credit reporting agencies. And again, you'll have to contact each of the three about this, and you'll have to ask for a manual search of the child's credit report. And the reason we say that is, like I said, they shouldn't have a credit report. So if they're doing that search and they find something, that's that sign of potential identity theft. But if there's nothing there, they're probably in good shape, and then they can put that freeze in place. And again, you'll want them to check through those files. They'll need to look for the social security number and things like that based off that child's social security number. So I believe they require you to mail a copy of that. You don't want to mail those original documents. So there are some kind of, like I said, additional steps that you'll need to take. And it's going to be a little bit more time consuming, and there are some written requests in that. And I've got a couple of quick links on that that will go into a lot more detail. So if you have those slides, it'll be a great kind of tool for you. And we have all of these on our website as well. We have this little child identity theft, what you need to know document that will walk you through that. And we also have the protected consumer freeze document that will kind of walk you through, getting in touch with the credit reporting agencies about that. And I've also got a full webinar on YouTube that we did a few months ago. So that might be particularly helpful for folks if that's a situation you're really worried about. You can go to that YouTube link. It's the SCDCA TV YouTube, and you can watch that child identity theft webinar, and hopefully that will help kind of walk you through some of that process. We go in pretty great detail from what I remember about that presentation. And if you have not done so regularly, or if you're not doing it quite regularly, we encourage you to go to annualcreditreport.com and go through your credit reports at least once a year. The credit reporting agencies are offering free credit reports every week right now. You want to go through it quite frequently. If you can go through a couple times a year and just double check all your information, make sure that any phone numbers, addresses, things like that are actually addresses and phone numbers that belong to you. Any accounts that are listed, make sure that they're actually yours, that they're, accounts that you've opened up and the dollar amounts match. So, usually they should be pretty close to what's actively on your credit. So if it's a loan or a credit card, anything like that, those dollar amounts should be matching up. And you should do this at least once a year, if not a couple of times a year, and just kind of verify that everything's going, the way that it should be, and that there aren't any signs of identity theft. We recommend using annualcreditreport.com because it is authorized by federal law, and they're not going to steal your information or use it to kind of sell you a lot of different products and things like that. A lot of free services, or kind of using your data or using information about you to offer a service or another product or something like that. So there are rules about annualcreditreport.com by federal law and what they can do with your information. So that's kind of why we encourage folks to use that site. And this will help you out too. If you need to get in touch with each of the individual credit reporting agencies, those are their phone numbers and their links too. So you can kind of go through that, and that will give you a lot of good information about different steps you can take to protect your information. I'll leave that up for a second, but again, those should be in the slides there too. And we also encourage folks to set up a Social Security account on their website, myssa.gov. And kind of the reason we say that is you want to go onto that site, set up an account, and take those steps before somebody else does that. So if your information's breached and your credit, or not credit card, if your social security number is available on the black web or something like that, you can kind of go through and make sure that your information is protected on SSA.gov, and that nobody else is opening up these accounts in your name or with your information, and then they're able to kind of take advantage of those benefits before you do, right? So even if you're not the age of retirement or something like that, you may want to go on to ssa.gov and go ahead and create those accounts so other people aren't able to do that. And like I said, we always like free. So kind of the big thing I always encourage people to do is set up those account alerts, like on your credit cards and your banking information, things like that on those financial accounts. Hopefully they've got some kind of alerts that you can go into the settings and just kind of look at what they offer. I know some folks like to get, alerts anytime that there's any kind of credit card spending or anything like that. You can set up dollar amounts. I like to have dollar amounts where certain, charge goes through on my card, I get an alert for it on my phone. Or if there's an online purchase, I get an alert on my phone. You can kind of go through those different settings with those different accounts to see what they offer and find out kind of what works best for your lifestyle and what you're kind of comfortable using, and set up all of those different free alerts that you can do. You can set up dollar amounts where if your balance goes below a certain dollar amount, you'll get an alert, things like that. There's a lot of great tools that you can take advantage of with your banks and credit card companies, and those tools are generally free to do. And also set up those login protections. What do we mean by that? Two-factor authentication, of course. So make sure you're setting up either, if it's the face scan or getting a text alert where you have to enter that additional information after you've put in your password. Those will be great tools you can use, and it will make it twice as hard to get into your account, even if a hacker gets those passwords. And kind of as we're speaking about passwords, I encourage you to set those up to be strong and unique. We say unique because you don't want somebody to, hack in and get one password and then have access to every account that you have. So, set up all these different passwords as much as you can. You might even want to consider using a password manager. There's some good ones out there. But, make sure all of your passwords are long and strong. So make them at least 12 characters. Uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols, you want all of those things to make them complicated, right? So you want to make them as kind of beefed up as you can, just so people can't easily guess them. So don't use things that are on your social media, maybe like a pet's name, something like that, or, any of those things that easily can be guessed that, some of that information be out there. And again, password managers are a great tool. If you've got those slides, StaySafeOnline.org is a great resource, and they have some information about password managers that maybe would help you out as well if you're kind of on the fence about if you're wanting to use one or not. Kind of getting back to two-factor authentication, I just kind of, again, want to encourage you to do that. Find a way that is convenient to you or something that you're comfortable with, maybe a passcode that you get on a text message, or authentication apps are great too. That's what we use here at work a lot of times. So those authentication apps that will give you certain codes or whatever to get into accounts, those are great. Again, face scan, fingerprint, any of those things. Just find whatever you're comfortable with, what works with you and your devices, and take advantage of that. And we encourage you to use that on every account that you have. Social media, email, those are kind of big ones, along with financial accounts. So really take advantage of two-factor authentication. And again, it will kind of beef up that security and make it twice as hard to get into your accounts. And if you're setting up security questions, just kind of keep in mind too, you don't want things that are available in public records or online, like mother's maiden names, always kind of an easy one, zip code, birthplace. Those are things that may be available somewhere, especially if you post on social media a lot. That might be something a hacker can kind of go through your social media and figure out pretty quickly. So really just kind of take a look at the security questions if you've got those on some of those accounts to kind of reset passwords and things. Just kind of look at what they've asked and if that information is available public, and try to use something that, only you would know. And kind of as we wrap up here, kind of one of the good pointers is don't give all your information away. A lot of companies, when you're filling out stuff online, they may ask you for a lot of different information about you, or things like that. And if you're not comfortable with the information that they want, don't shop there. It sounds simple, but if they're giving you or wanting more from you than what you want to give, you don't have to shop there. So kind of take a look at what they're asking for from you, and make a decision of, whatever you're comfortable with sharing with them. And if they're asking you for required fields that you have to do, and they're wanting to save your payment, you may want to take a look at that too, and kind of reconsider. Anytime that you don't have to save those payment options in those websites, that's a great thing to do. So, don't try to save those payments in there. Basically, you don't want somebody else to hack into that account and be able to go on a spending spree with your information that's stored on a website. So if you don't have to save that information, don't do it. I know sometimes people tell us, my water company or my utility or, something like that, they have to save that information in there. But, take a look at that, and especially if it's, a service that you don't have to use, take a look at what kind of payments, if they're saving that information or not, make a decision from there. And as always, we always tell people, security methods, just one isn't going to be 100% safe. So you want to take steps further so you can add additional layers and additional layers, and that's going to kind of beef up your security. So the more things you do, the better. And again, it's just kind of a good point. Just because you get a security breach notice does not mean you're the victim of identity theft. And that's kind of why we were stressing take those actions now, especially with the security freeze. So that will kind of help protect you. So if those things are out there and hackers get that information, you'll have already secured your accounts and you're out there monitoring your credit reports and you have your credit reports frozen. So that will kind of give you that additional protection. So even if your information gets out there, you're a little bit better protected. And here's kind of our quick wrap up. If you forget the rest, again, consider a security freeze and fraud alert. That's going to give you a great amount of protection. Again, you want to kind of go through those credit reports and those statements. You want to make sure everything's accurate. Tell people too, make sure you're monitoring those financial accounts, because there are some people who don't report things or don't notice that something's happened until a great length of time has happened. And kind of at that point, you may, not have those protections by law. So you want to find those problems as quickly as possible and report them to those agencies that might be involved. So if you're finding charges that go through on your credit card, you would report those right away and not months or, a year or something later. Crazy. So you want to go through those statements and reporting in those problems as soon as you find them. And of course, defend against scams. And what do I mean by that? I mean, kind of watch out for those phishing scams, particularly, scammers, especially if you're a victim of a security breach. A lot of times they'll use that information from the breach to kind of target you with another scam. So they have a few details about you maybe, and they'll use that information to send it to you. Some people will tell me when I'm out in the field, they'll say, I've got notices from people who were scammers and they knew that I used this credit card company or whatever. Well, that information was included in a security breach. They knew what credit card companies these people were using. Then they targeted them with text messages pretending to be that company, right? So really kind of keep an eye on that, and always tell people if you're getting messages like that, kind of sound shaky, use those contact information that you always use. So you can use those trusted websites, the apps for those accounts that you probably have. If you're like me, you're probably on your credit card app quite frequently. So use that app, use those phone numbers on the back of your credit card, use those things that you know are true and not those messages that are coming into you randomly. And if you're interested in a credit monitoring service, just kind of keep in mind, people ask us about this all the time. There's a lot of services that will do things, but just kind of know what they're offering you. A lot of times it is something that you can do for free. So if they're just kind of looking at the information that's available on your credit report, that is something that you can do yourself, and you can do it for free. Again, annualcreditreport.com. So just kind of keep that in mind whenever you're considering using a monitoring service, kind of know what they're offering and know if it's something that you can do yourself for free or not, and see if it meets the needs that you have. And here's a little quick information, and hopefully you guys got this on the slides that you could download, or it's another file that I dropped in there, but it's our How to Prevent Identity Theft book, and it is on our website, consumer.sc.gov, under that little identity theft tab that you'll find on the page. But we kind of walk you through some of that process of different things that you can do. We go into greater detail about fraud alerts, freezes, identity theft protection, things like that. And if you are the victim of identity theft, you can call our office, and that's our number there on the screen. And of course, consumer.sc.gov would be a great site to go to. And you can report identity theft and scams to us by going to that website. We have a little form there that will ask you for a little bit of information about what happened. And we have an identity theft unit. Like I said, they'll kind of walk you through that process and send you one of our toolkits here, which is what you see. And it will kind of help you take those steps to stop damage and hopefully repair damage and kind of take those additional steps to protect yourself. So they'll kind of walk you through there, things you might do. Again, consider a security freeze, fraud alert, and then they'll kind of go through this identity theft report with you and kind of take those steps of what you might need to do next. And of course, I encourage you on consumer.sc.gov. You can request a lot of our publications and our information. Ditch the Pitch is our scam prevention guide. So that's one that we've got up there. We updated that last August. Our identity theft prevention guide hopefully is something you can download from this slides today. And we've also got our credit report guide as well on our website. And you can request those books if you would like them mailed to you. We do have actual book copies that we send to folks for free. So consumer.sc.gov is a great resource to go to, and you can either get PDF versions of those books, or you can request us to mail physical copies to you. And I would like to encourage those folks who may be in the Charleston area, North Charleston Coliseum. We'll be there March 27th for our last shred event of March. We just had a couple that we've wrapped up in the last week and a half or so. But March 27th, 11 a.m. will be in North Charleston there at the North Charleston Coliseum. So we encourage folks, if you've got documents with personal information on them, tax records, a lot of things that people tell us that they have. So if you need help shredding all of those, we encourage you to come out, and we'll take up to 3 boxes or 3 bags per vehicle, and we'll help you shred that. And the Shred 360 trucks do shred all that paper on site, so it is protected there. And if you're interested in our upcoming webinars, tomorrow we've got a safeguards rule updates for businesses. So that's one of our business presentations that we walked through with some of our companies that we license and things, and some of our legal folks kind of go through with them of different steps that are required by law to protect information. So that is the service we're providing for businesses tomorrow at 2 p.m. Next Wednesday, on our Wednesday webinar, we'll be talking about identity theft and scams, how to stay safe. So that's our general identity theft and scam presentation that we do a good bit, quite frequently all over the state. So that's one that will help a great deal of folks. So hopefully you'll join us next Wednesday at 10:30. And then the next week, we'll be talking about artificial intelligence. So we'll be talking about AI and how scammers are taking advantage of technology to target folks with different identity theft and scam tactics out there. They're trying to get information about people using highly sophisticated programs to kind of trick us all into making bad decisions and clicking on links and giving information away. We encourage you to, if you're on social media, to follow us on Facebook, X. YouTube is great, especially if you're watching our webinars, or if you miss one. We've got a lot of our webinars on YouTube, SCDCA TV. And hopefully, if there's information you missed, you can go through those YouTube channel and find that presentation. And like I said, the one on child identity theft may be particularly helpful for some folks today. And we're also on Instagram as well. And I'm going to click here if I can find my screen. I'm going to click in. I thought I saw 1 or 2 things kind of popping into the chat box. So I'm going to try to see if I can see those here. And one of my buttons has disappeared. So give me 1 second. I'm not seeing anything at the moment, but if there's something there and I am not missing it, I'll let you know. But it's giving me a little bit of a fit here at the moment. So give me 1 second. I'm gonna try to find. I see the chat box, but I'm not seeing my Q&A box. My screen has moved on me. All right, I do see one thing here. Sorry about that. Yes, somebody has asked me to send them the slides, and I will do that. I see your email address there. I will do that. And like I said, if I missed you, please, you can reply to that email that our webinar notices go to, and I will be glad to send that over to you. I do see that popping up there on that email address. So I will try to hold on to your email there and send that over to you momentarily. All right. Well, if anybody else comes up with any questions that they think of later on, you can send those over to me. Again, publicinfo at consumer.sc.consumer.gov. Like I said, too, our identity theft prevention book is available on consumer.sc.gov too, under that identity theft tab. So that's going to give you a lot of different resources as well. So if you can look through those, we will let you know. All right. Well, thank you guys very much for joining us today, and we will see you again next week for our Wednesday webinars. We hope you'll join us at 10:30 next week. Thank you.